Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to be talking about how to navigate TradingView. So how to actually use it, how to set it up, and so on. So very quick, simple introduction. We already talked a little bit about TradingView. So, let's keep this simple and jump right on the charts. So what you guys see here is a 3-chart layout. I'm going to walk you through the different charts in the next lessons as well. But first, I'll show you how to actually use TradingView. So TradingView is a pretty simple software to use, right? The first thing that you should know is the actual color template, right? What I like is black charts, black theme in general, simply because a lot of my trading that I do it at night, and I find that the white charts are just very bright and in my face. So a lot of myself and a lot of the traders, they typically tend to use black kind of themed charts. So this is what I have here. However, if you prefer to switch them to white, all you gotta do is just go to these 3 lines up to the left and check this off. Dark color theme off, and then everything will just change to white. I'm not gonna do it here just because it will mess everything up that I've already set up, but that's all you gotta do is just click that button and it will change everything to white. Now, everything here pretty much auto saves on itself as well. So when you click on this menu, right away over here, there's a few different things that you need to know of. So autosave, obviously turn that on, simply because you want to make sure that all your analysis and your charts, everything saves. Now the sharing, keep that off. And is there anything else to note here? The drawing panel, that itself also, you're going to be using this drawing panel all the time. There's this little box on the left hand side that pops in and out when I turn it on and off. That's something that you will actually be using, so you need that on. That's kind of it for this menu. Now, the one thing that I want you guys to do is take a screenshot or take a note of all these pairs. So these are just, first of all, they're just currency pairs. We're going to be talking more about Forex, stocks, cryptocurrency later on in this masterclass. But if you just want something for reference right now, take a note of these pairs: Aussie dollar, Aussie CAD, Aussie Swiss, Aussie yen, and they will be much more explained in much more detail later on in masterclass and so on. Now, when it comes to this actual software, let's dig into it. Top right, what you have is your chart layouts. So you can switch them from a single chart to this double chart to my favorite chart layout, which is this triple layout. I got 1 on the top, 2 on the top, and 1 on the bottom. That's what I typically use on a regular basis. And I'll explain that in more detail again later on as well. We're going to have a fully dedicated lesson to chart layouts. Now over here, the one thing that you want is also take a note of this, the symbol. When you click that off, when you turn it off and you select one chart, let's say I'll just select this one and I switch my pair, it just switches this one chart. So that's sometimes handy, but majority of the time we're gonna want to keep the symbol on, clicked on, so that when I change my pair, all the charts change. That's very important. And the next thing is the crosshair. So that's this little thing. When I move my mouse, you can see here on this 5-minute screen, when I'm moving my mouse, everything pretty much, that's the crosshair, the tracking tool. Now I want that to be visible on every single time frame, right? So crosshair on. And this way it's when I move the crosshair, you guys can see it here, it moves on every single time frame. That's very important as well. Now, how to actually switch pairs. There's many different ways. You can type it in right away. You can just type in Aussie dollar and you have the many different data feeds. Now the data feeds, let's talk a little bit about that. Here we have an FXEM data feed, Oanda data feed, Forex.com, and ICE, Saxo Bank, and so on. So that's just FX. Now, if we're looking at cryptocurrencies, so let's look at Bitcoin dollar as an example. We also have many different exchanges here. So these are exchanges: Bitstamp, Coinbase, Bitfinex, Bitrex, Gemini, Forex.com, and so on and so on. They're different exchanges, they're different data feeds. So what I mean by that is that every single exchange, every single broker has a different data feed. And typically you just want to stick to the broker that you use. And if you're using FXCM for your Forex charting, then you can use the FXCM data feed. For cryptocurrency, if your brokerage is Bitfinex or Coinbase as an example, then you would just be using the Coinbase data feed. Now there's this another data feed specifically in the Forex market. So if we just type in Aussie dollar again, it's called ICE. Let me select that for a second. ICE is a composite data feed. So what that means is that it's pretty much an average of all the other data feeds, of all the other brokerages, right? So it's not a precise data feed of what one broker shows you. It's a data feed of what majority of the brokers show you. It's an average of all the other brokers' data feeds, right? Put together, and here's the average data. Now, why is it good? I mean, because it's a very accurate representation of the general market itself. It's not biased to just one broker data feed, right? And it literally shows you the entire picture. So I prefer to use IDC data feed myself because I like to not be biased to one specific broker itself. However, a lot of people like to just keep it simple and use the broker data feed. That's just a personal preference. It doesn't matter which data feed really you use. They're very similar, pretty much identical. So whether it's FXCM for Forex or IDC for Forex, the composite data feed, just pick one. It doesn't really matter which one you use, but I just wanted to mention that here just because that is a question that I typically get, is which exchange, which data feed to use. And that again really just depends on your broker. And if your broker is not here, then again you can just use that ICE data feed, which is the composite feed, the average of the many here. Right, and it's the same thing for stocks. So if you want to look at Apple as an example, here we have Apple, right? Apple Inc. on NASDAQ, so that's the exchange. And there's the Apple feed. Right, so with TradingView, you can look at everything from cryptocurrency, right, to Forex, to stocks. So it's very handy, right? Everything is here, everything's available. Now, also the time frame. So the way to change the different pairs and the ticker symbols and everything that you want to look at, again, you can just type it in as an example. Or you can go down here and type it in on the top left corner as well, right? And all of it is going to populate over here. So that's the few different ways of doing it. Alternatively, you're going to set up your watch list, right? And you're going to have the different pairs and ticker symbols and so on laid out right there. And we'll talk about that later as well, and later on in this masterclass. Now, so that's really the basics of TradingView. Let's go a little bit deeper into the actual time frames. So if you want to change a time frame to, let's say, a daily chart, you can do so up here. Now this is a daily chart. If you want to change this to a weekly chart, again, you just click right there and now it's a weekly time frame. If you want to change this to a monthly chart as an example, you can click this little arrow and then all of a sudden you have all the other time frames that you can choose from. So here's a monthly chart, right? So 4 hour, 5 minute, and 1 hour. We're gonna have a detailed lesson on this as well, because the different charting layouts, I do something called multi-time frame analysis, something that you will learn later in this masterclass as well. And because I use something called multi-time frame analysis, right here I have 3 time frames. I have the 4 hour, the 1 hour, and the 5 minute, and that is multi-time frame analysis. So that's why the time frames are actually important. Now, let's go to set up your actual tools. And the tools are over here. So all the way on the left hand side, you have all the tools that you require, and everything from the actual crosshair, so it's this little tracking tool, the mouse, right, to the different trend lines and so on. Now I'm going to do something. I'm set up the tools that you will actually be using on a regular basis. So if you're following along, I recommend that you follow along and just star every single tool pretty much that I recommend, and then later you can play around with yourself, whichever tool you tend to use, then you just choose those later on once you get more comfortable. But myself, something that I use all the time is a trend line. Another thing that I use all the time is a horizontal line. And another thing that I use quite often is an arrow. Okay, so I want all those three. And right away you'll notice that this little box popped up over here, and I have my trend line, I have my horizontal line, and I have my arrow. Now there's a few more tools that we require, so let's go into the next little category here. And there's many different tools that you will not be using here, but the ones that you will be is Fibonacci retracement and Fibonacci extension. These two, so you can start them if you wish. If we go to the next one, this is more of a drawing tool. So you got a brush, you got some rectangles, some triangles, and so on. Personally, I don't use them. You might use them here and there, but it's not something that I commonly use, so I don't star them as favorites for easy access. But if we go to the next one, text. So the text box, that's something I use all the time. And also the arrows, arrow up and arrow down. Now again, I'm going to explain all of those later on in the lesson. So right now this is just setting up trading views so you know where everything is when we're navigating through the lessons later on. But later on I'll show you exactly where these tools come in and how to use them and all of that. Over here, what you can do is, this isn't something that you're going to be using on a regular basis, but something that might come in handy is the Elliott wave tool. So Elliott impulse wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's something that might come in handy in the Elliott wave lesson. So I'll come back to that later on. I'm not going to mark this as a favorite because it's not something that you're going to be using on a regular basis, but it might be. You know, it's really a personal preference. And then another one is the Elliott correction wave. So let's start them for now, but just letting you know, this isn't something that I use on a regular basis, just once in a while. Now the next one, this is something that you will be using all the time, and that is the long position tool and the short position tool. Okay, both of those. And also, yeah, you know, that's kind of it. Just those two, long position and short position from this end. And that is it, you know. So now you have this little bar of all the tools that you require. Everything from a trend line to a horizontal line to an arrow to the long and a short position tool, and everything else that you require is again here as marked as a favorite. Now you can take this, move it around wherever you want. I typically just put it on the bottom. So let's continue. Let's go a little bit deeper here in the trading view. And another thing that I want to show you is when you right click on the chart, you can go to the settings and change the entire appearance. So from the symbol itself, I use something called hollow candles. So you see my candles are white. A lot of people tend to have green candles. So if you want a green candle, you can change that right here as well, right? But I like white, so I typically use just white. These are my settings right here. Another thing is the status line. So the status line is this thing on the top left-hand side, right? So turn it on and turn it off. That's the symbol. I like to have that on. You can turn on other different indicators here, but to me that is unnecessary information. I like to keep my charts very minimal, right, and remove everything that is unnecessary. So that's kind of what we're doing here. Scales. That is the scales that you see here on the right hand side of every single chart. Not much really to change there, just keep that as is. The appearance. So this is where you can really play around with the backgrounds of your charts. You know, make them white if you want them white, make them gray if you want them gray. Again, I like black, so I keep everything black. Same thing with the vertical lines. You can make the vertical lines white and so on. I don't need them, I don't use them, so chances are you're not going to be using them as well. So I just make them black so they disappear. Same thing with the horizontal lines. You can plot these horizontal lines onto your chart. I don't use them. To me, they're unnecessary. It makes things crowded, and it's not minimalistic, and I like minimalistic charts. So again, I turn that off. Don't need it. So that's kind of it from the settings point of view, and you can just apply to all once you get the ideal settings that you prefer. Now, is there anything else to mention about TradingView? I mean, it's a very simple software to navigate. We're going to go into a little bit more detail in the next lesson as well. But the other thing is just a few little boxes here on the right, right? So we have the watch list, and this is something that you're going to be populating later on as you go through the other master classes, whether it's Forex, cryptocurrency, and stocks and so on. So that's something that you can populate and have very easy access to your actual watch list and the symbols and the tickers that you look at on a regular basis. Over here, you have your alerts. So alerts come in handy, specifically when you're analyzing charts. Just remove the old ones. But when you're analyzing charts, sometimes you want to know, for example, if price action is breaking this 4-hour 50 EMA. So I might place an alert right here. And it's just this little plus sign, add alert on the 4-hour 50 as an example. And it's right there. Right now I have this red line, that is my alert, and it's populated right here. So if you want to check all the alerts that you have live, you can do so right there. And that's simply, it's useful for, again, when you're away from the chart, when you're not watching the charts, but you want to be notified when price hits a specific level. Alerts is something that I use every single day, multiple times a day, because I don't want to be standing on the computer all the time, right? 24 hours a day. Because of that, I will be using alerts. I will just spend some time, maybe an hour or two daily on the charts, make my analysis, figure out which trades I want to be executing and so on. And then I will just be placing alerts at the levels where I want to be buying, at the levels where I want to be shorting, or just at the levels where I want to make sure that I'm on the charts when this level gets hit, as an example. So I'll just place my alerts, get off the computer, do my thing for the day, and then I have TradingView installed on my phone, right? So if one of these alerts hits, the TradingView app on my iPhone will notify me, hey, Apple just hit 200.0. You know, you should check your charts. So that's where alerts come in handy. And again, you can see them all right here. Now these other tools, I mean, majority of them, realistically, these other options here, you're not going to be using. You might use the hot list when we get into equities and stocks later on in this masterclass. You are going to get used to using the calendar, however. These are the economic events. They're all the different news, and economic news to company-related news and so on, country-specific news that are happening today or tomorrow or the next day. They will be listed here in the calendar, and that's something to just know that it exists, right? And that's right there. And that's kind of it. You know, a lot of the other tools here, they're just for community, talking to other traders and so on. Typically, I don't stay away from them because they tend to bring a lot of emotional trading and so on. And to me, it's, again, unnecessary information. So TradingView is a very simple platform to navigate. We've already set up the tools that you require. Again, they're on the left-hand side, right? I showed you a little bit how I like to set up my charts, and you can play around with it a little bit. And all you got to do is just right-click on the time frame, on the chart layout, and play around with the colors and make sure that your candlesticks and your chart layout looks exactly how you want it to look like, whether it's black or white or gray or any other color that you wish. And that's kind of it. You know, realistically, that's kind of it. We're going to be using TradingView a little bit more later in this course. But for now, that's it for this lesson. So hope you guys enjoy that. Hope that makes sense. Again, it's not a very hard software to learn. All you got to do is just play around with it a little bit. And then after a day, maybe after a week, it will just be second nature. So that's it for this lesson, guys. And I'll see you in the next one.